So before we get started sculpting, I wanted to work with you on setting up an interface. Now, with the exception of one brush set, everything that I will be using throughout this tutorial course is just standard to ZBrush. And the extra set that I'm going to be using is not required, but if you want to use them as well, you can get them on this artist website. His name is Sakaki Karu, and he offers them all for free on his Gumroad, and I will include this link in the course notes. So before we can set up our interface with all of our brushes, including the ones that we're going to use from SK, we need to make sure that they are loaded on startup. By default, you can add in any brushes you want by double-clicking on them, but they're only going to be there for your session. So we want to make sure that these are all here every single time we load ZBrush. So on this side, I have the unzip from my download. Actually, I have this in my backup file. On this side, I have the ZBrush program folder open. And what we want is to go into Z Startup, brush presets. And for me, I already have a ton of stuff in here already. But as you can see, here are the brushes, and just for emphasis, I'm just going to grab them all. And we're going to say copy to brush presets. And then we're pretty much good to go. So now that we have that, if you've already have ZBrush open, you are going to have to restart it. Since I already had them installed, I'm not going to do that. We're going to just jump right to the next step, but go ahead and pause the video, make sure that you're all loaded up. And you can tell when they are loaded for you, when you've loaded ZBrush and you've pressed B for the brush palette. And for Sakaki Karu's brushes, they all start with S or SK, so we can type S to filter down to the brushes that start with S. And here they are. So here I've got the carve, clay fill, cloth, all the really good stuff. So awesome. They're all loaded in. And now I know they're going to be there every single time I start ZBrush. That's fantastic. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make our brushes a lot easier to access than having to open the brush palette, remembering what things start with, and then clicking the one key, I guess, to get that. So I like to have a bunch of brushes either along the right-hand side here or sort of along the bottom. I'm not sure which side we're going to go in. Let's see where they fit. But most importantly is being able to set up your interface in order to actually customize it. So the first thing we do is go into Preferences, and under Config, if this is collapsed, just click on it and select Enable Customize. Now you'll see that, so there's been spaces added to the top and bottom of your bar. These are definitely great places to put stuff, but they're not the only place we can put stuff, as you're going to see in just a second. So since we're focusing on moving brushes around, I am going to dock the brushes palette over here on the right side just to give us quicker access. As you can see, when you open the brush palette, if you're not quite as familiar with ZBrush, it does kind of very helpfully list a whole bunch of stuff for you. I don't know if this is an order in which I've used them or if it just sort of dropped them in there, but either way, it doesn't matter. It will update as we add more brushes or select more brushes. So let's start with bread and butter standard brushes or default brushes that come with ZBrush that are pretty commonly used. The first one being the standard. So I don't need to select it, but I will need to hover over this icon. I'm going to hit Control and Alt and then drag this. And while I'm still holding down those keys, I'm going to find a place that's probably useful to put this. So I could put this over here. And you see, it's bigger than this bar, but when I drop it by letting go of my left mouse button, it makes the space for me, which is actually pretty cool. I can essentially move things, maybe do a double row here, and make a little bit more room on this side. So we're just going to move all this super common stuff. Honestly, I'm not really sure what this is, and this is really precious real estate, so I'm just going to get rid of it by dragging and letting it go, and now it's gone. Now, nothing is gone forever. You will have to hunt and find wherever this is in the particular palette. So in this case, a lot of this stuff is in, if I can guess the first time correctly, Transform. Yes and no. So a lot of this stuff on the right side is from Transform, but that mysterious button that I wasn't sure what it did, It doesn't live here either. But here's a really cool thing. You can always go back to the beginning. So I've just turned off Enable Customize. And if you irreparably completely mess up your UI, you can always restore your standard UI. You can also restore a custom UI because you're going to be able to save these out as files. So I do this a lot, especially now. Of course, I still have my old UI that I use, you know, for my day-to-day that I've built up over years. So it's fine. So you don't have to worry about accidentally messing something up. You know, if I, let's say, oh, okay. So side note, you can't actually, I disabled customize. I was like, why can't I move that? So enable customize. Let's say, oh my God, I lost the scale button. That's kind of a problem. Let's go in and we'll just restore the standard UI and we're right back to where we started. So this very interesting button that I'm going to have to find out what this is. Well, right now I don't need it. So I'm going to get rid of it, but there's a thing. If you need it, you can find it again by just resetting your UI. All right, so we're going to get rid of that again because I want that real estate for all of the things that I always use. We're going to go and grab that brush palette and move it back over here. It's going to save us a lot of time. Let's get that standard brush back and we'll move that back under here. And I'll just quickly do a little bit of reorganizing. These are all navigational buttons and I like to keep those together. The perspective toggle and the floor toggle, just the rotation selections. So just like the perfect alignment, it will snap for you, but it also let you sort of do whatever you want. So if you're very particular about alignment, you could spend hours making sure this all fits perfectly, but I did want to warn you that, yeah, it tries, but it's also going to let you do whatever you want. So you can have buttons overlap, I think. So just keep that in mind. I'm gonna keep the rest of these moving buttons here, though. Some of these I don't use quite as often. I just use hotkeys. Now, line fill and polyfill are super useful. Transparency and ghost, incredibly useful. Solo mode, also super useful. Expose, not quite as useful, but for now I'm gonna leave it in. So definitely standard. That's a big bread and butter. Clay. What is it? The clay buildup. There it is. Clay buildup. Also, this is a standard ZBrush. We're gonna put that in there as well. Move brush. Very, very handy. Let's see what else we got. Here's the SK cloth. I'm going to put that, but I'm going to put this down a little bit here. I like to keep his brushes together just so that I can mentally tell them apart from the other ones. Put the clay fill right under there. Trim polish, also super handy, so I'm going to grab that one and move that over here too. Inflate, very, very useful. Move that here. Now, if these brushes are not showing up for you in this space, I should really consider that this is probably from my history. Once you've opened the brush palette, let's go to B. I push B and I for inflate. Okay, so maybe inflate. There it is, inflate. And once I've pressed it, it should now show up in your history on this side. So the first time around, you will need to select them. You'll see the active brush, and then you should be able to see this in the list here. So moving on, I will also grab the slash button, the slash brush, I should say. Right, so that is truthfully most of what I use all the time. I do like the clip brush. We will be using some of the clip brushes. For the time being, I'm going to just grab the clip curve and I'm going to move it down here on the bottom. And now we have space to kind of add to this as we go. All right, so I don't actually want this brush's palette to be docked on this side, though you are absolutely free to keep it there. I'm going to just drag it into the workspace and let it go and close this for now. I will come back to that later, but for right now, we're gonna hunt and pack for all of the useful things, and then once we use them a few times, then I'll put them. I like to fill up this bar up here, and also that left-hand side. This side I tend to just kind of leave. There's a window. Oh, I take that back. That is the window. I forgot about that. So that one by default, we have the tool palette over here. It's so important. They just dock it by default for you, and that is not wrong. We're going to spend a lot of time in here, and most of the tools that I'm going to put on this side are going to come from this palette. There's just so much stuff there. This is most of our toolkit right over here. That said, I think we're ready to at least get started, and we'll build up the rest as we go.